Hey everybody, good morning.
Good morning. It's Coffee and Conversations. I've lost count of the episodes. Probably 8 or 9 maybe.
I don't even know what day it is.
Yeah, well, here we are. Oh man, it's been a wonderful ride. We're gonna take a bit of a turn in our conversation today. And I thought it'd be fun to sort of just talk about sort of the moment, either the time of life, series of events, whatever it happened to be that basically made that turn to where you fell in love with Jesus, like on a personal level, if that makes sense.
Yeah.
So like, obviously, like you grew up going to church, I grew up going to church, missionary kid, past your parents were planning a church. Like there's a lot of dynamics there. A lot of people in those similar situations did not continue to pursue Jesus as they got older, teenage years, young adult years, a lot of, I have a ton of people that I know sort of in that mid-20s that are sort of deconstructed and sort of left their faith in a way.
Yeah.
And for me personally, there's been some really key moments that were so significant that like really transitioned a relationship with God from a family experience or something we did together on Sundays or going to church, or the fact that we were missionaries, seeing God do stuff. But there was a moment where it shifted, like where this was wow, I just met Jesus for reals. If that makes sense. So I don't know, I thought it'd be fun to kind of talk about that, help people out. Obviously people, locked down, shut down, and could cause a lot of questions to come up,
Sure.
their own faith or their walk with God and that kind of thing. So
Yeah, I know for me, as you said, I grew up in the church. I think I was in such a healthy and amazing family, and so I don't have that testimony of like, yeah, man, I was in the Bloods and we fought the Crips and I almost died and then an angel appeared and I don't have that story.
Yeah.
I remember as a teenager, like I kind of wish I did, because it sounded like all the best Christians came from the worst places.
Funny story. So we visited I don't know if I told you this, but we were visiting Pensacola, Florida during
like
that
Brownsville?
During Brownsville revival, 1997. We showed up on a Friday night. We didn't know it was their baptism service. We go in, service is going on, and then they do these baptisms and testimony after testimony of just that story.
Yeah.
Of like crazy conversion
Wild
moments.
stuff.
Oh yeah. I was 14 at the time, and I remember sitting in my chair thinking, I want one of those stories.
Yeah.
I'm like, I don't want to go do that. I don't want to almost murder someone. Like,
I was wondering if I needed to murder somebody. Like if I wanted to be a good believer. But so I as a teenager, I grew up in the church and I remember I believed in God and I lived the appearance of a very good Christian life. I was a product of my environment. I was a product of a healthy family that loved Jesus, faithfully tended and led and poured into a church. I had my own relationship with God in a way, not in what I knew was possible, but I had one. I actually, when I was a kid, I remember going to the Power Team. Do you remember the Power Team?
Yes. Oh yeah.
And I gave my
Donnie
life.
Moore.
We went. I loved it so much. We went every night for 3 nights. I got saved every night.
Yes.
I lost count of how many altar calls just to like shore it up. But there definitely was a reality even as a teenager that there was a part of me that had a real relationship with God in a way. I'd really been baptized, really living that Christian life.
Yeah.
But I was afraid of hell.
Yeah.
Right? And that was like a real part of my walk with Jesus. I was afraid of hell.
Yeah.
And that kept me from even being the rebellious kid. Like I wasn't even rebellious. Like I had way too much conviction. I had a praying mom. I got stories of like I was getting ready to do something that was just like rebellious or secretive, and then my mom would be like, "I was praying for you," and I'm like, like I had the fear of the Lord. And
was that a cultural context that you were in? Was that a church culture? Was that just the sort of the mode? Because it was similar for me in that way.
I wouldn't call it a church culture. We didn't grow up in that kind of church culture.
Yeah.
I just knew the hell existed, and the very simple concept of hell and sin and right and wrong. I don't even have a memory of someone scaring it into me.
Yeah.
I had a mom that prayed, and I knew hell existed.
Yeah.
And I knew that it was an option, right? And so that alone was like, I didn't need anyone to put it in me.
Yeah.
It was already there.
Yeah.
And so, anyway, when I was 16, I kind of came really probably, it was 17, at the end of 17. I actually had like my real first fork in the road.
Yeah.
Like you don't really have real forks in the road until you're like 18 years old.
Yeah.
Picking college, and also you're starting to think for yourself. You're not just following. And I think that the power of that coming from where I was, having a real fork in the road where I could really determine I could pick a different direction in life right now.
Yeah.
Thinking about college, thinking about my future, thinking about dating, thinking about all that kind of stuff. I actually could choose which life I'm going to live. I could really, I have the power now to redirect my life.
Yeah.
And I am, I think that realization of how powerful of a moment that was for me has changed the way that I consider all those moments in life now. You know, that forks, there are bumps on every road. Yeah. Every road has bumps. Yeah. Every road has hurdles. But you only come up to a fork in the road like every so often. Yeah. Where you really can make a decision to change directions completely. Yeah. And those are the defining moments of life. Yeah. Right? And so this was definitely one of mine. And for me, like some people have heard my testimony. I won't get into it. It's kind of dramatic. Yeah. But when all of my friends, Tim included, our worship pastor, my buddy Matt, 6 of us got together. Yeah. And I know for a fact in that room, some of them were wondering if they were going to have sex before marriage. Some of them were like wondering if their buddy that does weed, if they would give it a try. Some of them in that room were wondering if they were going to start partying and doing alcohol. We were all kind of at the fork, like all of us were at the fork in the road. Yeah. Like we were all homeschool or Christian school or public school, but church kids. Yeah. All the same story. And it really just came down to, let's choose to, and it kind of had this whole like, let's seek the God of our fathers. Yeah. Like it's kind of that vibe. Like we've heard the stories. We've been in the revival meetings. Yeah. Winnie Banoff was here last week, and we saw all of our parents flopping on the floor. Like we're all at that point where we're just like, this let's press into the God of our fathers. Yeah. But there was like this caution going, and if he doesn't come, we're taking the other road. Yeah. It wasn't said. Yeah. But you could tell.
There was a bit of a gauntlet.
It was. Yeah. We and it wasn't like God, it wasn't that. Yeah. It was just this hidden thing we just all knew. Yeah. And we chose to do it, and a lot of people know the story, know that first time we got together it was terrible. And and my buddy Matt like only played punk rock power chords. Yes. And he's like, open the eyes of my heart, Lord. And, and no one was bold enough to pray. Yeah.
You sit in a quiet room, you're kind of like, oh, Jesus.
Oh, yeah. His mother's in the kitchen cooking, and we're all like, I don't want to pray. And it felt like an hour. It was probably like 30 minutes, and just ended. And at the end, it was like, well, let's never do that again, Yeah. But then sure enough, it's like a week later, and we're all hanging out after church on Sunday at my buddy's house, and we're going to watch a movie, and we decide, let's do it one more time. Yeah. We put down the movie, we did it again, and we prayed, and one of the people in the room, actually Melissa Arroyo, who's part of our team, she was Tim's sister, and she had a visitation with an angel while we were all there. Wow. And we all were stunned, and she was praying for me, and she said, Jamie, when you sat down, I saw an angel, like in my mind's eye, like in my imagination, I saw an angel over in the corner. And dude, I don't know what it was. Like it was definitely what my parents instilled in me. Yeah. Like I knew it was real, and I knew that I wanted it, but I needed God to show up for me. And so I thought, if there really is an angel over in the corner of that room, why am I sitting right here? And without even thinking, I ran at the corner and I nosedived into this like basement concrete floor corner of a room. And I ran as hard as I could. I nosedived the corner. Yeah. And when I'm not kidding, like full spread, boom, hit the ground. And when I did, a physical wind blew into the basement. Wow. And all of us teenagers, no one's watching, we're not making anything up, a physical wind hits, everyone hits the floor simultaneously. The presence of God drops where nobody could stand. Wow. And all of a sudden we begin to shake under the power and the presence of the Lord. Now everything up to this point was so boring.
So nice.
It was. Everything up to this point was so boring. One girl was like, I'm going to go soak, right? We're all Christians. We all know the terminology. She's like, I'm going to go soak in the corner. Yeah. And when I hit the floor, she wakes up from her nap screaming. And she's like, oh my God. And Tim is like, what? And he's like shaking in the presence of the Lord, and people were like trying to crawl to where I was, thinking that like, let's go to where the angel is. And it was like, as teenagers, like I look back and I'm like, oh my gosh, but we were teenagers. We didn't know what to do. We were just, the presence of God came. Wow. We're shaking. It's real. There's wind blowing to the point where you could like feel it on your shirt. Like, and she's screaming, and Tim's like, why are you screaming? And she goes, my back is on fire. What's going on? And she can't move. And like God showed up in that room. Dude, that lasted for hours.
That's insane.
And I remember like my dad picking me up.
Yeah.
And I just get in the back seat of the car. I don't even get in the front. I just get in the back and I'm just quiet. And I'm like still like. and I remember my dad, like, I remember my dad, going like, how was it? I was like, fine.
It's a good time.
Yeah, it's fine. And he's like, oh, okay, good, yep. They didn't talk. I got home, ran upstairs, because no 17-year-old wants to tell their parents like, oh my God, and he moved to my life.
Yes.
Because basically saying, you're right, I'm wrong, like, And so ran upstairs, just spent more hours with the Lord. And
there's even an element of like, if I talk about it, it's like, you don't know how they're going to respond, and it feels, there's like this pressure, like this precious thing about it too, where you're like, I don't want this to like leave. I want to do this again, but like, is it not real? Is it real? Like, there's like this
we're just
inner
telling
turmoil,
anybody.
Like,
when it's real, I've found that when it's kind of like I'm kind of exploiting something small, I found that I want to tell everybody.
Yeah.
When it's real, and like life impacting, I don't want to tell a soul.
Yeah.
Because I don't want anyone demeaning. Yeah. Like, no, you weren't there. You don't understand. And they're like, oh, that's sweet. I had that happen once. I'm like, no, you haven't.
Yeah.
That was great.
Oh, I shook one time. No.
That's not what this was.
Yeah.
This is not your conference meeting shake. This was a life-altering. God is standing in this room, and we all can't stand it.
Yeah.
And anyways, like, make a long story short, we started getting together regularly. Because I remember the next morning we got on AOL Instant Messenger. And we're like, hey, did that happen? And it's like, yeah, did it happen to you? Yeah, it happened to me. Okay, so we're all on the same page. That really happened. Yeah. And we were like, can we do it again this Friday?
Yes.
And we got together, but man, God started moving.
Yeah.
And the
power cords for the open minds.
No power cords. It's amazing. The anointing came and he got anointed. No more power cords. Now he's an anointed worship leader. Like, it was incredible. It's like, where did you learn all this?
That's awesome.
And it just turned into a movement. Like, people started showing up to the house that weren't invited. And like, everywhere we went, God started moving. We started getting words of knowledge when we were going to eat. Like, something changed in our life. I remember like in the middle of it. I remember like in the middle of all of this, I had this opportunity to God saying, will you choose me over everything else?
Yeah.
And will you give your life to chasing me? And it was like when he touched my life, he gave me the opportunity to covenant my heart to him forever.
Yeah.
And this is when I fell in love with him. Like I had no other options. All options were taken off the table. Like, it was him and him alone. Yeah. And it really was like I chose to look for him. Mm-hmm. At the fork in the road, I chose to look for him. Yeah. And I found him. Yeah. And it wasn't by my own doing. It's because my choice. Yeah. Like, invoked the presence of God onto my life. Yeah. And when he touched me, he became less of an idea and more of a person. Mm-hmm. When I felt his presence, he was no longer an idea that I was trying to uphold and follow. Yeah. He was a person that was real in my life, wanted to know me, interact with me, and not only that, but to give me himself to me, and to call on me, and to entrust me with a mission. I remember all of a sudden, like, it was no question. I don't even remember my train of thought. I go back to my high school, and I go, I'm starting a Bible study. Like, it was just no thought. And the Bible study exploded. I had teachers coming. Kids were standing on desks. Like, the presence of God came, because God wanted to give me something. He's like, this is my kingdom. I want to share this with you. And I'm like, I love you so much. You want to give this to me? I got I got teenagers that are into cults and satanic groups. I went to the high school that Anton LaVey what was in high school at, right? So there's a major satanic cult.
Yeah.
And they're all like cutting themselves and wearing crystals and all that.
Yeah.
These kids were by the dozens were getting saved
Yeah.
and getting set free and giving me their razors. And like in high school, I'm like opening my locker and there's a girl standing there giving me, here's my satanic book, here's my razors. And I'm like, oh, I don't want to touch it. You know, like I didn't know what to do with it. But there was, but it really was. I was like, man, I love you so much, God. Like I don't have to do anything. You just, I pressed into your heart and you gave me your heart.
Yeah.
And now like we do stuff together and you tell me secrets and mysteries and like now I'm experiencing the prophetic. I always knew the prophetic. I didn't go to a class, but now I'm like learning it. Like words of knowledge are flowing and I'm getting cancer on this person praying and they're getting healed. Like, and just stuff started flowing. I'm like, I love you so much. Yeah. This is so fun. And game over, man. That's like awesome. It was just,
I just think it's such a significant difference. That obviously lordship in your life is a critical thing, kingship of Jesus in our heart, all of that stuff. But it's such a significant difference when someone is just following God versus like they've really fell in love with Jesus. Yeah. Like it's such a significant difference, and I think the two sort of get described or just talked about in the same context. Like oh, I'm following Jesus. Versus like meaning like, oh, I love Jesus, I'm a Christian, da 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 da. But like there is a difference when you hear people really talk about like, this is when I fell in love with Jesus. And you watch their choices after that moment reflect it. It's like, it's such a significant difference. Like when you hear people talk like this sort of like personal, like if you take that moment and you like fast forward a few years when you have like big sort of forks in the road later or like big hurdles in your life or things like that moment, that element of like, no, I'm pursuing Jesus, like this is real.
Right.
It completely shifts like those choices and those decisions that are getting made, you know?
Yeah, and I just think it's really important for people to like understand, it's like, I don't love Jesus because I shook on the ground. I don't love Jesus because I've seen the sick get healed and all that kind of stuff. That's all a byproduct of love.
Totally.
Like, he became so real.
Yeah.
And his like continued presence on my life.
Whatever that looked like. It was like whatever it was.
I just followed him and things happened. And then it would make me excited because I'm like, I love you. You do the coolest stuff.
Yeah.
And you've brought this element into my life that I never expected or I didn't know that I could walk in. Like I love all of that. Yeah. But more than anything, like what no one saw, like the shaking people saw, the miracles people saw, the revivals in the high schools people saw, what people didn't see is that every night, like I was so in love, like I could, I was so in love with Jesus. I was writing love letters to him every night. Yeah. And then I'd put my Bible under the pillow and go, I just want your word to like seep into my mind while I sleep. Yeah. And every night, and I chose a red pen because I just thought red letters were cooler because the Bible and I'm not kidding you. I wrote love letters to Jesus every night and put it under my pillow. Yeah. Not because I think he's a tooth fairy or something, but but I don't know why, but I just wanted my sleep, and no one told me to do this. Yeah. I wanted my sleep I wanted it to there to be an interaction with my spirit, with his spirit, even while I slept. Yeah. I wanted to encounter the Lord. I wanted dreams. I wanted to see him and encounter him. Yeah. I all of the stuff that happened that everybody saw was all a byproduct of what nobody was seeing. Yeah. And it was me writing love letters to Jesus, just saying like, if you could be here in the flesh, I would hug you and never let go. Like, I love your presence. You've changed my life. Everything I've ever done, all ministry, all the houses of prayer stuff, all the miracles, all the things that we've done in the nations that we've gone to, everything is rooted out of what nobody sees. Yeah. And I have no interest in showing it to anybody. Yeah. Because I love the presence of God and I love him so much. Like, I want him here in the flesh. Yeah. And, all the other stuff is so great. So I want anyone to go think like he fell in love with Jesus when he like fell over.
Had that power encounter and all of a sudden like, oh, magically you're in love.
I don't love shaking. I don't love the miracles. I love the presence of God. And those moments were proof that he was here. And it was his presence and what I felt is what made me move out of you are an idea and move into you are a person. Yeah.
That's crazy.
God.
Dude.
Oh, how about you? Let's get away from that.
I mean, it's interesting hearing you kind of describe some of those moments because like I have like a kind of a similar like path like when I was younger, right? So like really solid family, amazing, like a good, incredible example on how to follow the Lord, loving. Like I remember, waking up and my parents were like having quiet times at 5:30 in the morning, and like I remember one time when I was like, I would have been around 11 or 12. I remember telling my dad, I wanna like have a quiet time, like, and I'm like you, like because he would get up so early, and he's like, all right, well I'll wake you up when I get up, and I mean that didn't last very long.
Right. You tried.
Yeah, I tried. But what's interesting is like throughout like my teenage years, like I saw same thing. Like I saw the power of God move, and I did all the things. I checked all the boxes. I, like in a good way, like out of a good heart. I wasn't just trying to fill out a punch card. I mean, we were really involved. Where we were in Kenya in the 90s, like it was full on renewal, revival stuff. That stuff that was happening in Brownsville and Toronto, it was global. Like it was going all around the world. And our church in Kenya, I mean, there was, a couple thousand people on these cement soccer stadium risers, shaking, falling, no one getting hurt. I mean, you're talking like 2-foot risers,
right?
And just plain concrete. The power of God would hit and just, I mean, hundreds of people just falling over, shaking, and no one's getting hurt. No one's like it was the craziest thing. Like no catchers, there was none of that stuff, And when I was a kid, I got saved so many times. We had this evangelist come. We called him an evangelist, but Perry Stone Jr.
Oh, Perry.
Every year at Easter, he came and did like a conference like thing at our church, multiple services. Every year he gave the same altar call, and it was, if you're not 100% sure, if you're only 99% sure, and like the impact was like, why go to hell over 1%? And so here's one of the pastor's kids going down to get saved again,
every night.
My annual salvation. It's just like, and then, but I when I was 14, I had like a kind of a sort of a significant sort of encounter with God. That was, again, like it was good, it was significant. I made some choices about my future and just like this interaction with God, and all that was good. I saw people getting saved, healed. But that entire time, there's this element of, I see power, right? But nothing's personal. I see like things happening. I see people getting saved, miracles, all these different things, but it wasn't personal. It was this sort of like cosmic force that like was off in the distance, and maybe if I was lucky enough, I might get to meet him one day. And so all of like the pursuing, all of like the, like all of the stuff that was wrapped in that was never out of a performance. It was always genuine. I mean, I got baptized in the Holy Spirit when I was 9 in a very, very significant, crazy God moment, okay? Things like that, but yet I remember just so much of my teenage years just with this like longing, God, can you please be real? Like I wanna hear your voice. I wanna talk to you. I don't wanna just like pray and hope maybe you're listening. How do I know? Like, how do I know that I'm interacting with the right God, with the, like all of this stuff, And so I remember, it was right at my 18th birthday. I had been in Coeur d'Alene for a year, moving back from the States, and my parents had moved to Vacaville. And so I came down and worked for a summer there before I went to school of ministry in Redding. And that summer, I came into church, and I came walking in, and there was this guy. His name's Mike Jarvis, and it was back when like people were doing flags and all that kind of stuff, and he had like these giant like 6-foot flags, right? They were like this lame sort of like gold sort of reflective, sort of, classic, whatever.
Yeah.
It sounds cheesy now to talk about, but I remember walking into church, right? And this is like after experiencing renewal and like all of that kind of stuff in really crazy ways, right? I come walking into church, worship is going on, and he's just off on the side of the stage flagging. And it was this weird, surreal moment where, like, my parents kind of warned me to, like, hey, they always did a good job. They're like, hey, like, there's going to be some stuff that maybe you're uncomfortable with. Just ask us, ask questions. Like, just know God's really doing some really cool things here, and people are kind of worshiping in different ways with flags and dancing. I was like, okay, cool, like.
Right.
And then I walk in, and I see it happening, and there was something that ignited in my heart, and it was like, this is what I was looking for. And I don't understand, like, the why that was, except that the fact that it was like the presence of God was there, and I was invited into this sort of like zone or moment with him. And I remember going down to the front and just like being at the altar, and I'm like just weeping, just like, God, I have found you. I found you. I found, like, there's just like this feeling of like, I found you. And I had this vision, right? At the time I thought, I'm like, am I making this up? Like, what's happening to me right now? Like, I'm like, had this dialogue going on. And it was a kind of a cool little picture that God just showed me just about me and him and this relationship with him. So if it wasn't like even that like profound,
right,
just to like verbalize it, you know? And I left and my parents were like, wow, that's really cool. Like, yeah, the same sort of thing. I'm like, oh, it's good. It's good.
Yeah. Yeah.
I'm fine. It's good, you know?
I'm fine, you're fine.
Yeah. Fine. And like this thing of like, wow, did I really hear God's voice? And I was like, oh my, was that a vision? Like, I've prayed for visions my whole life at this point, up to that point. Like I had asked God, please let me, like, I want to have visions. I want to get prophetic words. Like, that's reserved for these select few out there somewhere, you know? And the next Friday night service, they had like a Friday night, like fire service or whatever. I'm in the back and there's this two crazy old intercessor ladies, like classic. They're the
Totally.
best. They're the best people in the world. These two old, just gnarled hands intercessors. They come over and hey, Sonny, they grab me and they're like, we're gonna pray for you. And I'm like, okay, like, and they start praying the exact vision I had had the week before.
Wow.
I mean, specific details. Like, it was so, and I'm like, trying to not just like freak out. Like,
right.
I don't know if that makes sense. There's like this, like, oh my gosh, like what is happening right now? I'm like just out of this zone, right? And they're like, all right, they pray and they just walk away. And I sort of just like sat down with this realization that like, not only is God real, but he is desperately trying to talk to me.
Wow.
And like, crap.
Yeah, I know.
Yeah. It's just like this, it's just this realization of like, you're not some cosmic force out there. Like you are wanting to talk to me.
Yeah.
You're wanting to speak to me. Like, you actually care about me. Like, out of all of creation, out of all of those things, you would pursue me individually. That all those prayers, all those times seeking you, all those shaking on the ground, and we had all that happening. Like, you know what I mean? It was like, you are actually interested in me, not just some thing I do. You know what I mean? Or just this thing I perform, or the number of people I get saved, or like all these weird motivations for all these different things that I was doing, you know? And it was just like, you want to talk to me. And I remember like just going into the back and then I was a mess, you know? Just a total mess. And like that sort of like, there was a switch that happened. And then I went to Reading, and then like right afterwards, there was a couple of events kind of similar to that, where I went back into their prayer house, you know. If you've ever been to Bethel, they have like this 24-hour prayer house, you know. And I would go into there, and it was like the same thing of just like God saying the same message to me. Like, I care about you, I'm talking to you, like, and everything about my life, everything. There was like this dial over the course of like 2-3 months, maybe a little bit longer, where there was this thing in my heart that was like, you are real, and you actually want to have interaction with me personally. And it was the thing I wanted. You know what I mean? It was like, It was in response to this thing of like, this is what I wanted. Like, why wouldn't anyone else want this? Like, you know what I'm saying? And like, at that point, that was when it was like, it doesn't matter what comes up. Like, this thing is settled.
Right.
You know what I mean? And that for me is where like choices like that would come up. You know what I mean? Like compromise, no compromise, things like that. It wasn't a motivation out of hell anymore. It wasn't a motivation out of like risking my salvation, or, you know, it was none of that. It was purely like, I don't want to lose you.
Yeah.
Like, I want to be close to you. I want to be close to you.
Right.
You know, and even motivation for like cleaning up my mess. You know what I mean? That sense of like, a couple times I made some poor choices, and compared to a lot of people, they weren't that big of a deal. Like, but for me, it was like an area of compromise or something, you know. And like the motivation to go and clean up and go and talk to leaders in my life was like, I cannot lose this place with Jesus.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like and even through those moments, you realize that like, well, actually, like, it's not so on the line as you think. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
But there is this thing that you do want to guard that connection with Him, like at such a deep level, you know.
Right.
And man, like it's just such an interesting like thing to sort of go back and like think about and talk about, you know.
Yeah, I think it's crazy how much language we have for prophetic and for miracles and making good choices and avoiding temptation, all that. We have such good teaching.
Yeah.
But I really can't say that I ever learned anything out of them as much as I've learned that when everything is rooted in love, things flow out of love that I don't need to learn.
Yeah.
Do you know what I'm saying?
Yep.
And I even try to teach people that when we go on the streets, it's just like, oh, you've never healed the sick, never prophesied? That's fine. As long as you love the person in front of you, I promise you've created an access point to things that you've never experienced before in your life.
It's interesting that you'd say that specifically about the prophetic, because I always had wanted to prophesy. We had like prophets come to our church and like do stuff like that. And I had sort of like this moment with God, and I sort of was in this zone where like nobody was teaching it. I was in North Idaho in Coeur d'Alene, and we were doing some ministry at the altar, and I remember like I was praying for this guy, and this profound, it's like exactly what you described, this thing of like, I care so deeply about you and your situation. I didn't know what was going on, and I just started to like pray, and it was in that moment where all of a sudden I was like praying really specific stuff, and I didn't know why. I just was like, I just feel compelled to pray this. He starts weeping, and it happened like 3 or 4 times in a row that evening. And like they all came back and was like, how did you know what was going on? I'm like, I don't know, I just felt like I was supposed to pray that. And then like, it was like this look of like both of us just like totally confused, like what kind of just happened, you know?
Yeah.
And it was in that, it was like all of a sudden it's the same thing. Like it doesn't matter what someone teaches you. I mean, it does to a certain extent, but if you get that piece down, like loving the person in front of you and this thing of like how much Jesus himself loves that individual, that's what unlocks it all. Like it really does. You know?
Yeah, and that's the kind of stuff, man. It's like even with everyone watching right now, like our testimonies carry a prophetic nature to them, right? And the testimony of Jesus is the spirit of prophecy, and that with everyone watching, why we felt led to share these stories and stuff is that we have a lot of believers. We have a lot of people that are trying to follow the right life and the idea of God and eternity and fellowship and his presence. But God wants to pour out his spirit on all flesh. That God wants to encounter people's hearts and lives and really capture people into the kind of when we encountered the Lord, the whole infrastructure of our faith was transformed. Where it's like now the prophetic can be added in, now the miraculous can be added in, and it's not defiled, and it's not weird, and it's not an idol. It's literally the overflow. And so many people are trying to enter into the prophetic and enter into miracles and enter into righteousness, and they're trying to go through the wrong doorways. And they're trying to live and operate into the light, but they've never had an encounter with the Lord. They don't love him. They're not wild after his heart. They're not gripped by him because they've not felt his presence. And I think it's so important to understand how willing and generous God is with himself. And he wants to pour himself out on people, and that there is an encounter waiting for people. It takes a little bit of pressing into.
And that's the thing that
searching,
that's what feels confusing at times. Like you're saying, like God is looking to encounter you, right? But then there is an element of like, there's a bit of a veil you have to push through, right?
The glory of God to hide a matter, the glory of kings to seek it out. There really is. There is something extravagant about the pursuit. It's not him withholding. It's about you pressing in. It's about you looking and seeking and pressing after God, who who has at times hidden himself. That lovers would pursue him. And I think it's just so important that God's looking for a whole company, an army of people that press into his heart and just be lovesick and just give their whole lives to him and follow him. Everything else will flow and follow. All this revival and awakening stuff, it all flows and follows. It just becomes the byproduct of love.
It's really interesting too, because like the last like couple seasons where I've had to interact sort of on a closer level with pastors and leaders that are sort of from different denominations, sort of different walks and ways of doing services, and even where it would seem like their value system, like the way that they run services based on their values doesn't seem to like make sense or work, or it's I don't know if that makes sense. It's like, like how are you, like this isn't what church is about, like those sort of like things where it would seem like it would be a pretty significant disconnect. It's crazy how when you really start to talk to people and you encounter, like you really like get to know them and you hear their heart for Jesus and like how much they're pursuing and loving Jesus, those differences, however much of a difference, even in a value for the way we do our church services, the way we gather, when that is there, it's crazy the level of connection you can have with people that really believe pretty differently in some of those areas.
Yeah.
I mean, it's like a significant thing.
Jesus is the common denominator, right?
100%.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah, absolutely.
So.
Yeah. Well, I hope it, you know, if nothing else, this really stirs people, you know, it really like awakens their heart to the reality and the nearness of God and to, you know, there's something about simplifying all of this, kind of coming back to the beginning and just saying that like, we don't want to be professional Christians. We want to be wild lovers of Jesus, and that God will give us language, and He'll give us tools, and He will use us to transform society and impact. I love all that stuff, but I don't want to bypass the encounter part of it to get there. And I don't want to bypass all of the necessary seasons of fostering wild love. You know, and I don't want to do that. And I want to go through the right doorway into all that revival and awakening stuff, and that is becoming a lover of Jesus. It's all about Him, and you really can come back and always say it's always about Him. That's a sure foundation. You know, so I hope it stirs everybody, and I hope it really causes a movement of pressing in and you know, and seeking and finding.
I mean, obviously we're meant to gather, but like even in gathering, like it is about our personal pursuit of Jesus.
100%.
You know, and so like wherever you're at, like whatever you need to do to pursue Jesus, like what's hilarious to me is like all of the things that seem silly now when we go back and look at it, and even like after that moment I had with God, like I started like dancing and worshiping in God. I almost got a ticket. I almost got in a car accident trying to rush to church because I didn't want to miss any minute of worship. Like 5 minutes late was not acceptable. I mean, I was like.
And it wasn't because you were afraid of missing church. You wanted the presence of the Lord.
I just wanted to be in His presence.
I put 30,000 miles on my car driving back and forth from Maine to Connecticut when I was 18 because I just wanted to be wherever He was.
Yeah. And it's like that. So my point with all that is like there's not a formula. There's not some like thing that you have to do. It's literally just pursue Him. Whatever that looks, do something, try something. And if you don't get the feeling or if it doesn't, anything shift, it doesn't matter. It's pursuing and press in and keep pressing in, you know, and there will be those moments. Like breakthrough will happen, you know.
Yeah. People get worried about church attendance.
Yeah.
It's like you don't have to worry about church attendance as everyone's just wrecked in love with Jesus. Maybe if you have a church attendance, you might have a love deficit. You know?
Yeah.
We got to lead our people back into love with Jesus. And I don't care what generation, how many screens, all the things available. If people are in love with Jesus, they'll go to any length to be where His presence is. So, you know, so and that can be said on so many fronts about our Christian walk and our behaviors as believers. And so let's just get back to that.
Dude,
let's all just get back to that. So
I have nothing else to add. That's perfect. Peace.
Love you and bless you guys. Have an incredible Monday.